Glo is a genre with roots dating back to the early 2010s, sparked by Chief Keef's rise to stardom. Since then, it's evolved, shifting and adapting to fit the modern music landscape into what's now known as New Age Glo. And one of my favorite artists in this subgenre is Swapa. His beats are insanely energetic, raw, and carry a bit of a nostalgic vibe that bring you back to the early days of Glo. So with that being said, today I'm going to be breaking down literally everything you need to know about making New Age Glo beats in the style of Swapa. And this includes his energetic melodies, his insanely bouncy drums, and his use of classic sound effects hailing from the early days of Glo. And the first thing that I'm covering today is his super energetic melodies. And by far, the best VSTs to use for New Age Glo or even classic Glo are going to be Zenology, Nexus, Purity, and Expand. But if you don't have those VSTs, pretty much any kind of classic synth will do. You don't really want to use too many modern sounds. But with that being said, the first thing that I like to start my melodies off with in this genre is going to be something that establishes the rhythm. And something that's very commonly used to establish rhythm in these types of melodies is going to be an organ. And before you ask, for this entire melody, I'm using Zenology, and every single preset that I'm using is going to be down in the description below. So with that being said, for this organ sound, you want a nice, consistent rhythm. You don't want anything too crazy, as this is establishing the bounce of our melody. This is essentially like the scaffolding of our melody. This is what we're going to use to build the rest of our melody off of. Now, some notes that I heavily recommend making use of, especially if you want to go for that dark New Age Glo vibe, are going to be the first degree of your scale, or the 1, as well as the 5 and the 6. Now, why I recommend making use of the 1 is it's because it's a very solid foundation for your melody. It's not going to sound super dissonant. It's just going to be a nice ground for the rest of your melody to stand on. Now, why I recommend making use of the 5 and the 6 is because those notes are a half-step interval, essentially meaning that in the scale, they are only one semitone away from each other. These really close notes are going to assist you greatly in getting that dark, sinister vibe. And in any minor scale, there's 2 spots where these half-step intervals occur. It's yet again the 5 and the 6, as well as the 2 and the 3 of your scale. So with that being said, this is what the foundation of our melody sounds like. Now, the next thing I recommend throwing down is something that is going to fill the frequency ranges of your melody. So the organ is more so playing in like the mid to high range frequencies. So we're going to want to throw something down that covers those low to low mid frequencies, as well as something that covers those high range frequencies. So for those low range frequencies, the best thing you could throw down if you want to fit the style of New Age Glo is going to be a super low octave brass. This is just going to make your beat sound super anthemic and really fill in your melody. And what I like to do with these brasses is I'll layer them in the octaves. So I'm just playing the root note of our melody, which is A sharp, and I have it at A sharp 1 and A sharp 2. Now, to fill in those high range frequencies, I have 2 suggestions of what you can throw down. The first of which is going to be some kind of high octave synth lead. And yet again, for this melody, I'm making use of the 1 of our scale, the 2 and the 3, as well as the 5 and the 6. With, yet again, if you remember, the 2 and the 3 and the 5 and the 6 being half-step intervals. Now, the second thing I recommend to throw down to fill in those high range frequencies, especially if you want to stay true to Swapa's style, is some kind of weird, droning, alien type of synth. Now, I just have down this pad in Zenology, only playing our root note, and it sounds pretty standard with no effects. But to make it sound like it's like abducting you and about to probe your asshole or something, we're going to throw down 2 different effects. The first of which is going to be a comb filter. Now, I'm using Serum Effects for this, but there are other plugins like Filter Freak or Shaperbox, or you can even automate an EQ to have a comb filter. There's plenty of ways to achieve this without Serum Effects is what I'm trying to say. And for this, I have an LFO routed to the cutoff of our filter, making it move left to right. And then the second effect that you're going to want to throw down is a phaser. A phaser is very similar to a comb sweep in the sense that it has like a bunch of notches or dips and it's moving around a lot, but it's just going to amplify that weirdness of your sound. So with that being said, this is what our basic pad sounds like with those effects. Just much more strange and interesting. And this more so just acts as a background component for the melody. It's less present than all the other sounds, but it's good to throw in weird sounds like this as it makes your melodies much more unique. And now, all these melodies that I've covered can get boring really quickly, which leads me into my final tip: adding in counter melodies. And in my opinion, the best sounds to use for these counter melodies are going to be bells. And you don't even have to do anything too crazy with this counter melody. Just something that adds to the bounce of your original melody, but doesn't take away from it too much melodically. And yet again, we're making use of that 5 and 6 and 2 and 3. So just to recap the melody, you want to focus on having a good rhythmic foundation, filling in all your frequency ranges, including the lows, the highs, the mids, and adding in a counter melody to make it much less boring. So that being said, this is what the melody sounds like in its entirety. As you can see, we already have something that we can kind of bop our head to. We don't really need to rely on the drums to form the rhythm, as we can already base it off of what we have with the melody. And this is just going to make our beat much better, as certain aspects like the drums aren't carrying the rhythm. Which is going to lead me beautifully into the next section of Swapa's new Age Glo production, which is the drums. And before I get into the drums, I want to mention that they are all from the Vsts 3K drum kit. This video is not sponsored, I just want to mention where I got these sounds from so you guys can get them yourself. And I'll link his kit down in the description below. But with that being said, you're only really going to want to focus on three main things when it comes to your drums. The first of which is a super hard hitting, spaced out 808. And what I mean by that is you want to leave a lot of room in your pattern. Like I said, we don't want the drums carrying the rhythm of our beat. More so, we want it to complement the rhythm of our melody. So by leaving these spaces, we're making it so that the 808 doesn't do all the work in the beat. The second thing you want to focus on is making use of open hats to fill in those gaps left by the 808s. We don't want our drums to be too dry and bland, so throwing in these open hats can make them a bit more chaotic and busy, which is really going to assist in bringing up the energy of our beat. And now the third and final thing you're going to want to focus on for your drums is just a very standard clap and hi-hat. I'm just making use of a basic 2-step hi-hat, but if you want to integrate some rolls, I have a tip for you. You're going to go over to this magnet icon up here and either hit 1/3 step or 1/6 beat. These rolls, especially that 1/6 beat, are like integral to that glow hi-hat bounce. So make use of those if you really want to stay authentic to the style. And then as for the clap, it's just playing on the 2 and the 4, pretty standard. But if you want, you can offset your claps to make them play a bit of a drill rhythm. But I'm just going to leave them playing a standard pattern. So just to recap the drums, you're going to want to focus on having a hard-hitting spaced out 808, an open hat filling in those spaces from the 808, as well as having a hi-hat and a clap, which you can spice up by integrating rolls in the hi-hats or offsetting the clap. So with that being said, this is what our drums sound like all together. So now, the third and final aspect of Swapa's production that I want to cover is going to be his use of classic sound effects. And the main one that he makes use of is going to be voxes and chants. And if you want to make things slightly more interesting, you can integrate multiple different vox sounds. So that being said, I have this chant, as well as this chant, which is kind of doing a bit of a self-made delay by making the velocity stoop downwards. So with all of that being said, if you're making use of energetic melodies, insanely bouncy drums that don't take away from the rhythm of the melody, and classic sound effects that call back to that nostalgic glow sound, this is what your final beat should sound like. So yeah, it's going to completely cover how to make new Age Glo beats in the style of Swapa. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned something new. If you have any questions at all, throw them in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. As well as that, consider checking out my Patreon, where you get both the FLPs for all my beats in all of my videos and the raw, unedited cookup videos of me making these beats. That way, if you wanted to study the mixing, the mastering, the arrangement, the process it takes to make these kind of beats, the melody, the drums, all that kind of stuff, it's right at your fingertips. And finally, consider subscribing, as I post one tutorial a week and one sound kit a month. Sometimes. Other than that, it's going to be it. Peace!